Thank you for joining us today for LPA's webinar series. My name is Betty Wall, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Strategy here at LPA. I'd like to spend a few minutes describing LPA and some of the emerging trends in analytics, and then we will introduce our topic for today. At the end, I will discuss ways to get started quickly. LPA Software Solutions is a firm founded in 2001, headquartered in Rochester, New York, with over 50 consultants and sales locations across the U.S. With over 200 clients, we are focused 100% on topics of business analytics, business intelligence, data mining, predictive analytics, and big data. LPA stands for Leveraging the Power of Analytics, and our goal is to assist our clients with the successful adoption of analytics through advising, implementation, training, and software installation. Our consultants have an average of over 10 years of experience, and they are 100% certified in their specialized disciplines. They bring thought leadership to many industries. What this means for you is less risk, faster benefits, and better time to value for your business. As a premier IBM business partner, LPA has a deep understanding of the IBM Analytics software portfolio, and IBM's offerings are the most robust and comprehensive in the industry today, in my opinion. By adding Watson and cognitive computing with natural language capabilities, you can ask meaningful, common sense types of questions and also mine data without a hypothesis. Seeking non-biased insights and non-intuitive insights is an important part of the emerging field of analytics. Data truly is the world's new natural resource, and that data is mostly untapped today. Our experience is cross-industry, including retail, insurance, finance, healthcare, hospitality, manufacturing, distribution, government, energy, higher education, and many others. LPA's educational webinars, such as the one today, have garnered over 200,000 YouTube hits, helping our clients learn more about the field of analytics. Our clients range from Fortune 100 enterprise clients to one-person companies who are working to bring that terrific new product out to the marketplace. We specialize in software products including Cognos BI, TM1 for financial performance management, SPSS and Watson for advanced and predictive analytics, and information management solutions for data prep, data cleansing, data integration, and data warehouse assistance. This area includes data stage and quality stage, and appliances like the Pure Data or Netezza appliance. Oftentimes, the data prep is the most important part of a successful analytics project. Our clients are working in many different locations across this roadmap, embarking on unique paths of their own analytics journey. LPA is helping analytics leaders and C-suite executives incorporate analytics into their business strategy for efficiency and for competitive advantage. Oftentimes, this will include new software upgrades, health checks, and strategy roadmaps aligned with business goals. 80% of our clients are repeat customers, and LPA works to continue offering thought leadership to help our clients stay ahead of the curve. Predictive analytics is bringing fascinating new insights to companies today, providing much deeper information and supplementing what has been learned in the past from more traditional analytics using structured data. The goal is to enhance insight with new information and new perspectives. The cost of not seeing trends which are emerging and the cost of not knowing can be enormous to a business or an enterprise. Competition very often comes in from left field, from non-traditional players. We've all read about Uber and Airbnb as new and non-traditional market entrants, and the root of their success really started by them seeing a problem from a new perspective and then leveraging data in totally new ways. The amount of data in the world is doubling every 12 to 18 months, and computer systems of the past are just not equipped to handle this much data. Unstructured data from blogs, case notes, social sites such as Twitter can provide different kinds of insights, different than more traditional conclusions from structured data in databases. Consumers post over 55 million Facebook posts every day and 500 million tweets, which is about 6,000 tweets per minute. When you combine this with location and zip code information, and then add the effects of weather, for example, the market trends can be fascinating and non intuitive, oftentimes unexpected. During today's webinar, please feel free to ask questions through the chat window. I hope you will join us for future webinars by going to lpa.com on the homepage and clicking on events. If you missed a prior LPA webinar, we have replays available by clicking on resources from our homepage. And at the end, I will show those links. And now I would like to transition to our presenter who will cover today's featured topic.
Hello, my name is David Russell, and I'm the Director of Predictive Analytics here at LPA Software Solutions.
Today I'm going to be introducing you to Watson Analytics, which is an application from IBM, a web application that allows you to analyze your own data in an easy-to-use format. We'll start out sort of introducing you to the concepts behind Watson Analytics, why it was developed, what it's capable of, and then we'll have a demonstration. We'll sort of summarize what we've seen in the demonstration, and at the end we'll open things up for questions and answers. So to get it started, we all know that information overload is definitely upon us. We all have more data than we know what to do with, but we also know that we'd like our organizations to be more data driven, and everyone's telling us that we should have enough data to make better data driven decisions and let that data drive those decisions rather than our hunches or even our biases that we may have about what we believe is happening. We imagine being able to take advantage of all the data that we're collecting and finding the unknown opportunity and exploiting it in some way. We know that we want to be ahead of our competition, that we want to use cutting-edge tools to do these analyses, and we want to be the envy of our competition. We want people to look at us and say, how do they do that? How do they actually look at their data and make the best decisions every time? Reality is, though, that there are obstacles today. One being just the sheer volume of data, the other being the access to the resources that are necessary, whether those resources be technical or human resources necessary to do these types of analyses. And one of the things that happens here is that in the industry today, the data discovery tools are limited. The starting points are difficult to identify when we're looking at our data. Where do you start? Where do you begin your analysis, particularly if you're attempting to do something without introducing your own bias to that analysis? With the lack of professionals, as I mentioned, the lack of the human resources that have the skills and capabilities to do this analysis, we want to be able to streamline our analytics across our business analysts, that we want to allow our business users in each of the different operating departments of our company to be able to access data and analyze it themselves as best they can. We have a new challenge that introduces, in that those users don't necessarily have an understanding of statistics or any data visualization concepts, and frequently they understand their data, they understand their business domain, but they really don't know how to unlock the value of their data, and they really may not even understand exactly what's available in their data sets sometimes. And some of the problems just have to do with the data tools themselves. A lot of the tools are still geared towards more of a programmer. Even when you get to tools that are fairly simple to use, like SPSS Modeler or SAS, some of those still require some expertise that not everyone has time or the ability to develop. Frequently, that means that people fall back to spreadsheets, and we all know that that can frequently lead to problems with inefficiencies and error-prone nature of spreadsheets in general, as well as issues with just, even there's a complexity factor and needing to know about macros and pivot tables and VLOOKUPs and things like that. IBM has really looked at this as an opportunity to empower everyone and to get to the citizen analyst who has the ability to access their data and to make that data speak to them through tools and smart data discovery tools, as we'll see. And one of the most notable trends of the past decade has been the increase in significance that CEOs in particular attribute to technology. A decade ago, they might have listed technology as sixth in their list of most important factors for their organization. But now it's consistently at the top of the list of things that really impact the organization. The CEOs recognize that the convergence of technologies magnifies the impact of the technologies across your markets and your economies, and that those technologies intersect and combine in different ways to enable your organization to engage with your customers and partners in new and different ways. And accessing your data and analyzing your data is one of those, and some of those tools that are being developed in those technologies being used to access and analyze the data certainly make that possible. So one of the things that goes on here is that we can introduce concepts like cognitive computing to help organizations better understand their unstructured data. They can scale their expertise and discover ideas that they wouldn't even think about to help them engage with their customers, at a really deeply human level. We frequently talk about personalization when we start talking about looking at deeper data about our customers. And we want to be able to use guided, predictive, and cognitive analytics to investigate new trends, to look for new customers, to identify customer segments that we should be focused on. And we want to be able to share our customer feedback with everyone in the organization. We want to be able to redefine the way we compete in the marketplace by accessing the data that we have available to us and using that in every decision that we make in every organization. So IBM's answer to this is the IBM Watson Analytics, which is smart data discovery in the cloud. It allows the user to upload a data set and begin analyzing it immediately. And the tool actually guides you through that analysis of your data and helps to uncover key insights. And you can combine those with your experience and expertise to improve your decision making. There are 4 primary capabilities that are outlined with Watson Analytics. You have the ability to prepare your data, to make sure that your data meets the needs of your analysis that you're going to do. It allows you to pull connectors, or connectors allow you to pull data from a variety of different sources, and then to organize that data in a way that you can use for further exploration. You can use the guided exploration tools using natural language queries that allow you to interact with your data by essentially asking questions of your data. To type in a question and ask how 2 variables are related to one another, or 2 columns of your data are related to one another, and Watson will provide you the most relevant combinations of data that it has found in the data through its own analysis of your data, and will allow you to create graphs and visualizations that help you to understand the information that has been gleaned through that guided exploration. Another thing that Watson Analytics has that is really unique here is the ability to help you understand outcomes and look specifically at predictive analytics tools that are embedded within Watson Analytics to allow you to see drivers for particular variables that you might be interested in. So if you have a sales metric, you may be able to look at the drivers of those sales through tools like this. And the last thing that Watson really focuses on is then being able to share those insights, which is important it's in and of itself, may even be just as important as finding those different tools or different insights. The ability to actually to bring those together into a common place and then share those insights out with other people in the organization. So to give you an idea of the evolution of the business intelligence marketplace and the movement that we've seen over time, and the move to smart data discovery that we see today. And we started with just reporting capabilities with queries and dashboards, and we've been doing that for, at some level, maybe not the dashboard concept the way people talk about it today, but with SQL queries and analysis and OLAP for 20 or 30 years. And that has gotten us to a point where we understand a good bit about data. In the recent past, we've started to see a move to this data discovery tools that are more self-service, focused on visualization. But these self-service tools are frequently somewhat biased in the sense that you come to those tools with some notion of what you want to look at, and you are required to then tell the tool what you want to view and how you want to view that data. And so right at the beginning, you've biased your results to some extent. And then now we're moving to the smart data discovery, and Watson Analytics is definitely a tool that pushes us into this area of smart data discovery, where we have the cognitive query capability, where we can ask questions and can make sure that the tool can provide us responses of how that data works together based on those questions that we're asking. We have the storytelling concepts in a lot of different ways. Certainly the concept of sharing those insights and bringing those insights together is part of that storytelling mode. We also have a tool that is built in the web and completely intended to be used as a web-based tool, and that certainly meets well with the current set of skills that people have in the marketplace. That people are online all the time, and using a tool that's available to them anywhere is certainly a benefit. The last thing there is this unbiased concept, the fact that under the hood, Watson Analytics is using mathematical approaches to answer your business questions, helping you to answer why, and helping to avoid the need to rely on gut instinct and just your experience to push your ideas in a certain direction. This provides you with suggestions of directions that you can take and ways that you can manage your data exploration. And really, Watson Analytics is a different kind of solution than what we've seen in the past. We have our advanced analytics without the complexity. Most of the difficult work is done for you. So everything from the math analysis and some of the back-end coding is already taken care of so that you don't have to do any of that yourself. Just about anyone can use Watson Analytics with fairly little training. And you can receive the benefits of all the advanced analytics without the complexity of learning the tools and learning programming techniques that are frequently required to do some of these types of analyses. It's really designed for the business professionals analytics process, so it's easy to use. And the primary differentiators here for Watson Analytics are the natural language dialogue, the fact that you're asking questions and Watson Analytics is responding with recommendations on how to answer those questions. We have the predictive capabilities that provide this unbiased analysis, where we're allowing the data to tell us about itself effectively by looking for those combinations of data and things that drive other variables, using predictive analytic techniques behind the scenes to then surface that information to us and to give us the data patterns that we're interested in. We also have the ability to do some data scoring that you'll see when we look at it, that gives you a sense for how good your data is, how complete your data is. And then last is this social capability of being able to share the data with other people and to get that information out to others to view. And we'll also mention some things about analytics accelerators that are available to help you to see through a tool called an expert storybook that's currently in an open beta format. But that expert storybook concept allows you to find prior research that someone's done into a specific business problem and helps you to gain insight more quickly by providing you with the set of questions and data that have been important in the past to answering those questions about that type of use case. And that can be very valuable to share experiences through that technique, both for storybooks that are published and available online, as well as within your organization. So frequently we get asked, who is Watson Analytics really for? And really it spans the gamut of professionals that would be looking at data and analyzing data. We have everyone from your business professionals and analysts to data scientists and data engineers. All of them have some role in analyzing data. The individual business professional needs to answer questions about their data and make decisions on a regular basis. And so even though they unlikely have any formal training on how to do analytics, how to do the math behind some of the statistics, they can use the capabilities of Watson Analytics to have that analysis done for them and presented to them in a way that they can understand and make use of. Your business analysts are centered on processing information and getting things together and pulling information together to then share with others, but they don't have the advanced analytics capabilities of some of the other people, the data scientists, statisticians, data miners, the BI architects. But this provides them a tool that they can use to pull that data together and then share it with those other people with those other skills as a starting point for them to continue the analysis. And your data scientists certainly benefit both from using the tool as a quick look at the data potentially, but it also provides them a tool they can use to democratize access to the data that they're working with and make that data available to those citizen analysts in the field that are doing the work elsewhere and free up their time for the analytics that have already been moved further along, rather than doing the initial research necessarily, and helps to free up their time and make those resources more available to the organization for higher value analyses sometimes. So we have Watson Analytics customer use cases span a wide variety of areas, from sales and marketing to customer support, human resources, even to IT. You can see a number of different areas that we talk about with the use case categories, from just data visualization to finding drivers of behavior. And when we talk about analyzing social media, we'll mention in the demo a couple of different ways that you can actually use Watson Analytics to analyze social media data that's available. But in each of these different intersections of the categories and the different organizations within your business, you can see that there are many different ways you can look at things. From in marketing, just looking at visualizations, you can look at campaign ROI and customer trends, but you can also look at drivers of behavior to help you look at ranking opportunities for sales, or in the marketing, you can deal with cross-sell and upsell, or improving your response rates from your marketing campaigns. So there are a lot of different customer success stories out there about Watson Analytics and how different organizations are using Watson Analytics. And in this case, we're looking at transformation. And really the key there is that Watson Analytics can be transformative. It can allow more people to be looking at your data in ways that allow them to uncover new business opportunities and new insights from your data. By having more people have that capability, you again push that workload out to a broader range of people that can answer questions for themselves with the assistance of the tool, whereas before you had bottlenecks in getting access to the data and having the ability to analyze that data within the organization. So, as I mentioned, this is a web front end for Watson Analytics. So this is the interface that you have when you've logged into Watson Analytics. Essentially, there are three primary areas that you work with in Watson Analytics. You have your data area, where you're adding data to be analyzed to Watson Analytics. You can also do some tuning of your data within that section. The next step in your analysis is to actually do a discovery, to look to discover insights in your data. That's after you have your data prepared and ready to go. You can use your guided analysis tools within Discover to allow you to find the insights that you're looking for. And then the last is the display, which this is how you can look to communicate your findings, to actually combine your data, to combine the insights that you've found into a format, either a dashboard or infographic, or even, as I mentioned, the expert storybook format, for you to be able to create those and share them with other people, potentially within your organization, or you can even build those and then download them in a format that you can share with other people so they can see the same insights that you did. And this gets to that storytelling aspect of being able to allow you to carry them through your insights. And you'll see a little bit of that today as I go through my demo. So to give you some context for the demonstration that I'm going to be doing, I'm working with a data set that would be for a telecommunications company that is looking for customers. What they're mostly interested in is, with their customers, they want to identify based on demographics and usage patterns those customers that are likely to leave them, because that churn of their customers is something that is obviously a problem. Getting a new customer costs a lot more than keeping an existing customer. So the data set that we're working with is starting out in this case as a CSV file. And just to give you a sense of what that looks like, here in Excel, I've opened the CSV file and we have things like where they are geographically, how many months they've had service with us, how old they are, their marital status, years of current address. You'll see a number of different columns, and we'll see several of these in our analyses. But then we also have this column out here that tells us whether they have left for another provider in the last month. So to get started with Watson Analytics, we simply go to our data section, and here we can see data that's previously been loaded. But in this case, I'm going to click on the new data entry. And this allows me to load data into the system. And you'll see here that I have sort of three top-level choices. To import data, I can go to a data connection. As I mentioned, this could potentially be a secure tunnel back into your data centers, or a local file that I can upload from my drive. That's what we'll be using today. But first, in this import tab, there's sample data that IBM makes available for you to sort of get started with Watson Analytics. If you use Box, Dropbox, or OneDrive to store your CSVs and Excel files that you might want to analyze in Watson Analytics, it can pull those directly from those sources. If you use IBM Cognos for reporting and you have that reporting engine accessible on the internet, you can provide a link here and pull data directly from a list report into Watson Analytics to be further analyzed. The last item here is Twitter. You can, using this interface, I can actually pull data from Twitter. I can provide a search term and a date range, and it will pull from the 10% of the Twitter messages that it identifies from that with those search terms that you've looked for and you can do your own analysis on it. Now, there's also an extension to Watson Analytics that we won't be looking at today, but that's called Watson Analytics for Social Media, that provides greater access to social media data, and not just Twitter data, but also access to other sources like Facebook. And that analysis has a more directed and guided analysis that's specific to social media, and has tools and visualizations that are sort of pre-built into that tool that are based on analyzing social media data. But this would allow you to pull in Twitter data and do your own analysis. As I mentioned, the connection tool here, since this is a personal account, excuse me, I'll be able to show you in a moment the process of setting up a new connection. But if this were a corporate account, these connections would be controlled by the corporate administrator for the shared Watson Analytics environment, and I'd have access to those here. In our case, we're going to actually use a local file, and it's as simple in this case of I have my CSV file that I'd opened before, and I can simply drag and drop that in, and it shows up as an item. I can actually drag multiple CSV files or Excel files in here if I want and import them all at once. But once I do that, I click on the import button, and Watson Analytics will start loading and analyzing the data. While that's doing that, I'll show you quickly this data connections. Up here is my profile as a user. Again, since this is an individual account, I can go to the data connections tab, and then I can hit the plus to configure a data connection. And you'll see here that I have a list of all of the different data sources that it recognizes. This is using DataWorks, which is a data movement tool from IBM. That's a cloud-based data movement tool. And all of these data sources are available in that tool. And so, for example, if you had a Microsoft SQL Server instance that you needed to pull data from, and that SQL Server instance happened to live within your firewall, you could set up a secure gateway that would tunnel through that. Now, again, in a corporate environment, that would be done by IT for you. But they could set that up and allow data to be pulled directly into Watson Analytics. But they would have control. Once they built this, in building this secure gateway and building this data movement tool, they'd have the ability to control exactly which columns of data you have available to you, and exactly the information that would actually be possible to move into Watson Analytics. So there's definitely a level of control when you set up these data connections on what's seen in Watson Analytics. If we get out of that, we can jump back and look in our data area. Now, Watson Analytics has completed loading and analyzing our telco customer data. We see that we get this metric here that's 82% quality. You might ask, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that my data is not very good? What it's really measuring to some extent is the missingness of data, which is important when you're using the predictive tools that Watson Analytics applies in the background. Missing data, it doesn't necessarily know how to interpret that correctly. You may have wanted, missing data might be that the answer is no on a question, but it interprets that as a third option, as yes, no, or nothing, right? So some of those things, that quality metric is something to note. 82% quality, to be honest, is usually pretty good. It's not a measure of whether your data itself is useful, if you will. It's just it helps you understand how much data might be missing. Usually you want to do some sort of refinement of your data before you start analyzing it to do your discovery. So to do that, you can click on the little button to bring up this submenu, and one of the options is Refine. That takes us to an interface where we get to view the individual rows and columns of data and get a sense for what's in our data set and start to get a feel for what it is that we want to look at with our data. So we can start with these column properties. And here, when we click on that, for each column, it pulls up information about that column. It tells us what data type, in this case, we have text and number columns, what our aggregation type is, whether we're going to count or whether we're going to average some of these columns, and then whether we want them to be sorted by default in all of our future analyses. One of the things that I know is that most of these numeric values, I'm going to want to use an average rather than a sum. So this is the number of people in a household. I'm going to want to look at the average number of people in the household. I'm also going to be looking at the average months with service and the average years at current address and the average years with current employer. And this is household income. I'm going to want to look at the average household income. That's for when it aggregates, so that if Watson Analytics were to look at, say, everybody that had a post-undergraduate degree listed, how would it provide information about months with service relative to that particular choice of post-undergraduate degree? And this is just telling it to average that number. The next thing we can look at is we can turn on our data metrics. So this is, again, a lower level of data quality. So here we get some more information about each of these columns. We get a little distribution chart for each column that allows us to see sort of what the distribution of our values are. We can already see that, like wireless service, we have no missing values for that, and we have a skew towards no, that fewer people in this case have wireless service with this telecommunication providers, it looks like, than yes. We can see that males and females are fairly equally represented. And then for our numeric values, we can see sort of the distribution of the data and see how that fits. We also, for each row, you may have noticed that we get these little bar charts that give us an idea of where that particular value fits in the range of all values for that column presented. So again, that gives us a way to sort of get a feel for our data. In this particular case, I know that my organization tends to like to look at household income in ranges rather than as a whole number. So one of the things that I'm going to do is I have the ability to essentially derive additional columns or calculate things with these different features. We have sort of three different options for creating a new column. We can create a calculation. That might be if we wanted to add two columns together and create an aggregate of those two. We could do that with this calculation. We also have a hierarchy concept, so that's where I can define for Watson Analytics. Say I have a product hierarchy that's represented by three columns, product class, and product family or something like that. And you could define those 3 columns and how they are related to one another in the hierarchy, and that allows Watson Analytics, again, to do better analyses and allow you to effectively drill through those different levels. In this case, though, we're going to use this data group concept on the household income, and we're going to, once we hit data group, we're going to tell it that we want to work with household income in thousands in this case. And we're going to create a new column just called household income category. And I'm going to keep 5 groupings. And those groupings are going to have the ranges. So we're going to start, first group is going to be people that have less than 26,000 a year. Our next group is going to be between 26 and 39. My next group is going to be 39 to 57. Oops. Ooh, I did a bad thing there. Hold on. So I did 26. And I did 39. And then 57. And my last group is 99. And you'll note as I did that Watson Analytics was changing the names of these groups to match the numeric ranges that I was putting in. I also have the option, say, my marketing department has come up with clever names for these different household income categories. I could type those into each of these categories, and then that would be what would show up in my future analyses. But in this particular case, I'm just going to use these names so that I can see what those numeric ranges were that I had set. So once I hit done now, Watson Analytics creates a new column. We'll see over here in my list of columns that it shows up as household income category as a new column here at the end. And then out here to the right, we can see that we've added a new column of data that has those values, those names for the values. So rather than having the actual household income, just puts us in a different category. Since I've added this additional representation of household income, I don't want to use the household income in thousands in my future analyses of this data set. So I'm just going to check this checkbox, and that removes that column, and I won't see it as I start analyzing this data further. So I think I've made all the changes I need to make before I start my discovery. I'm going to actually hit Save As now. And I'm going to just save this as Telco Customers Modified. You'll see here I'm saving this in my personal location, if you will. If this were a corporate account instead of a personal account, there'd be a shared location here as well that would allow me to put this data set out where other people in my organization could also see it. There are security features you can control exactly who can see it and things like that. But the idea is there's another place you could put it that would make it available to others and allow them to see the data set and use it as their own starting point for their own discovery. So after I've saved that, I will then begin my discovery process where I'll start using the guided analysis that Watson Analytics provides to look at the data and try to start to gain some insights. So I'm going to close up my account settings. I'm going to close this, and I'm back to the front. Now I can see under my data section, not only do I have my telco customers CSV file, but I have my telco customers modified, where I've created a new category column for my household income, and I've also created those averages, changed the aggregation level. So now I want to start my discovery process. I have 2 options on how I can start that discovery. One option is to click on this Discover area, and here I could hit a new discovery set and then choose the data set that I was going to use to start my discovery. But it's a lot simpler actually if you know which data set you're going to use and you've got it in your data and it's easy to find. You just simply click here on our Telco Customers Modified, and it starts a new discovery set for me. First thing you notice is here in this interface we have the ability to ask a question about our data, and we'll do that in a minute. But first, here we have starting points. This provides me a list of items that Watson Analytics found were interesting in my data, either correlations between values or predictive models or driver models that it found during its initial analysis of this data that were interesting enough to be here as starting points to give me guidance in a direction that Watson Analytics believes I might want to go in analyzing the data. Now, you also have here under Create Your Own Visualizations, you do have the option of simply choosing a visualization type that you want. And then once you've picked the visualization type, just like most other tools like Tableau or something that provides visualization capabilities, you then just tell it which columns of data you want on which axis of your visualization, and it'll create the visualization for you. We're going to actually use the natural language processing abilities within Watson Analytics to ask a question about the data. So I note here in the starting points that it's found a model for months with service. Really, I'm not as interested in months with service as I am with churn or customers that might have left. So I'm going to actually ask the question, what drives churn, instead of sticking with what drives months of service. So I'm going to ask that question, what drives churn? When I do that, you'll see that Watson Analytics used the natural language processing to go search through a list of things that have been computed and the different options that it has, and it's found this column, churn within last month, and it says what drives churn with last month. So I can simply click on that, and from there it will bring up what's called a spiral chart. And this spiral chart, basically you'll have a dot on it for each set of drivers that Watson Analytics identifies that are correlated with churn within last month. And then the dot will be on the chart, the spiral, closer to the center, the more predictive power or the more strength there is in the relationship between the drivers and the value that we're looking to predict. In this case, we see that they're all sort of clustered here, and in the table we can see the list of drivers, the combinations of factors that Watson Analytics found that all have about 76-75% strength here. And one of the things that we notice is months with service tends to be in most of these, so there's something going on with months of service. I know that we're interested in customer category. There are always questions about customer category and how that's related. So I'm going to actually start my analysis by looking at that set of drivers. But before I do that, I'm going to name this tab, and I'm going to call it Drivers of Churn, so I can find that later, and you'll see what I mean by that when we get further along. So in order to look at a little more detail behind these drivers, I just click on this little plus symbol, and now Watson Analytics provides me a graphic to look more deeply at churn within last month by different bins of the we have churn within the last month with months with service by our customer category. So across the top we have each of these columns represents months with service, and along the rows are our customer category. And one of the things we can see as we start looking at that is that when months of service is less than 13, a short-term customer, they're fairly likely to churn within the last month. But then the other thing that we see is that for e-service, it's interesting that we've got a higher likelihood of churning in this 13 to 26 month range, so in the second year. So that's an interesting insight to me already. And so I'm a little curious about what that means. So right now I'm going to edit this, and I'm just going to name this tab Drivers of Churn. Well, no, I'm going to name this something different because Drivers of Churn is the same thing I had before. I'm just going to call this Driver Detail. And I'm going to go and ask a question about how does months of service compare by customer category. because I'm a little interested in e-service as a whole and how that fits into overall my months with service. So here we see this, how do the values of months with service compare by customer category? So that's the question I asked. So that's the one I want the answer to. When I click on that, what I see is that on average, e-service, my customers stay longest on average with e-service, but I also saw that for that second range of 13 to 26 months, they were fairly highly likely to churn. So that's pretty interesting as well. So I'll probably want to make sure somebody sees that. So I'm going to name this so that I can again find it again. And you'll note there, even though this name is too long, if I just mouse over it, it pops up nicely so that I can find those even if the names start to look similar. Now, one of the other things that I'd noticed early on with the drivers was that months with service showed up for just about all the categories or all the different measures as a driver by itself. And over here on the right, we see in this discovery section, these are sort of, I sometimes think about as micro insights or little insights that Watson Analytics wants to bring to my attention based on what I'm currently looking at. It's using its natural language processing to understand relationships and the types of things that might go together here. And I see that, there's one of these micro insights is this top churn within last month by months with service. So that, really is what I was curious about, was where that falls overall. And what I can get from this is that, in general, right, something's going on between the 2-year and 4-year time frame, if you will, where people aren't likely to churn. Aren't likely to churn if they've been with us for nearly 4 years. But inside that 2 years, they're more likely to. Now, we know that there are 2-year contracts, and so there are things that go on, in that 24 to 26 month. But these are, there's some tendency for people to churn in a shorter time frame than that, and that's pulling that average down below there. So again, that's an interesting thing that we might want to look at, might want to highlight for people to see that that's happening as well. And so I'm just going to name this months with service by churn. And that allows me to have that saved off. And then the last thing that I'm going to look at is I noted at the beginning that there's this, what is a predictive model for something? Well, keep looking at a churn. It'd be nice if we could predict who was likely to churn. So let's ask that question. What is a predictive model for churn? So sure enough, it finds my churn within last month again. I can click on that. So what this is going to do is this is using predictive analytic techniques to find combinations of my fields that can be used to predict the likelihood of churn. And you'll see right off the bat, we've got a predictive strength up there at 76.5%. Now I want to predict whether people that are going to churn, so I'm just going to tell it that I want to look at it that way. And I'm most interested in where they are going to churn. And so one of the first insights that I have from the decision rules view is that I can predict with pretty good likelihood that if they have electronic billing and that if their months of service is less than 13 months, so essentially they've been with us about a year, they're pretty likely to churn if they're in that category, or a year or less for their months with service. And that, that's an interesting thing that, maybe that has something to do with people that are more tech savvy, something that we're not doing to really garner their attention and keep them with us. So that's an interesting insight. There's another way to look at this decision tree or this predictive model. We can look at it as a decision tree, and you sort of read this as, at the left we have the, where we started with our top level, and then we have at each level of the tree, we see it broken down by, we're looking at months with service between 13 and 26 months. In that category, we can see that they're more likely to churn, or most likely to churn, if they've had that service in that 13 to 26 months and they have multiple devices. So maybe that has something to do with the way our data plans work, that they're not wanting to stick with us. So there's some useful insight there as well. So I'm going to save that off, and I'm going to save this as our churn model. So when I'm done with this, I see that I have a new discovery set. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save this, and I'm going to give it a new name so that it has something a little more meaningful, and I'm going to call this churn research. And again, you could save that in a shared location so that other people could look at it. But even there, I could choose to share this if I wanted to. I could share components of this with this share link. We could email images effectively of each of these insights that I've had, or I could download those images. I could even tweet the images if I wanted to. And then the last thing I do is link directly to them and provide links so that people could see these insights. And this gives me an ability to share that information with other people in my organization and allow them to see, again, another way other than them necessarily having to come into Watson Analytics. I can push this out to people readily. Now, the last step is that storytelling piece. How do I bring all this together in a way that other people can look at it and can understand the insights that I've had? And that's what this display element is for. When I go into display, I have the option to create a new display. And in this case, I'm going to just call this churn. And I'm going to create a dashboard. I'd mentioned, you also have the infographic option, this expert storybook option. But today we're just going to create the dashboard. And the first thing I get is an option to choose my layout. I can create multiple tabs in this dashboard. And so each tab has its own layout. In this case, I'm going to go with a 4-quadrant layout. So now this is where the naming really comes into play that I was doing before. You'll see over on the left, I have my discoveries that I can add to my display. And I can go into my personal folder, and these are the discoveries that are available to me. And here's the churn research discovery that I just created. And when I open that up, each of those tabs that I created shows up as an option here to be added to my page. So the first thing I'm going to add to my page is this months with service by churn, sort of an introductory piece to have somebody look at, there's something going on here between 2 and 4 years where we've got people that want to churn. They leave us on average, in those first 2 years. The second thing we'll look at is we'll want to sort of have them see this months with service by customer category, just to see that, e-service tends to be the highest category that we keep people the longest in that customer category as opposed to the others. And the last piece I'm going to add here from this investigation was this drivers of churn. So this allows us to have the spiral chart to show us how close to the center our discoveries are, and then we can also click over and see our drivers list to see what the drivers were. Now, one of the other things that's interesting here is we have the ability to add filters. So I know that people are frequently asking, well, what is it, how does wireless service affect this? So I can add a filter, and that allows me then to choose whether I want to look at just people that have wireless service with us. And when I do that, you notice the graphs update a little bit, but there's not really a huge change. And I've always been telling people there isn't a big change there, but I can leave the filter on here and allow other people to come to that conclusion themselves and be able to filter the data however they want to. I can also format the chart so I can decide if I want to show or hide these titles over each of the different elements. I can choose whether I want to show a legend overall. I can also choose just sort of the color palette for the whole display so that if I wanted to change my look to be a darker look, I could choose a different color palette down here. And then there's also an option for me to add other items that are not necessarily my insights from my Discovery tab. I can add just shapes out here. I can also add images or text or videos that I might want to add to this dashboard as well. Last thing I'll show you with this is that you have the option to, we did the discovery on our churn model, and that was with one data set, but somebody else has done this analysis on sales with a different data set. And if I want to, I can actually bring the insights that they had, and in this case, this global sales map, and I can drop that on this same display so that now I have a dashboard that spans more than one data set and has information that is useful for those customers to look at. All right, and then one other thing, when we're done, we can save this. And the last option that we have is we can share, again, just like we could have shared the insights from the discovery ourselves through the same options: email, download, tweet, or link. All right, so that is the demonstration that I had set up for us. So I'm going to just dive back into sort of talk about these further capabilities briefly. We have DataWorks that I mentioned. This is it's an option to use DataWorks to pull data in and to do the data movement and provide you the ability to move data from other data sources into Watson Analytics. You get that as part of your Watson Analytics subscription, and so that's certainly available to you. There's this expert storybooks that are available. We didn't look at those, but it is an open beta. This gives you the ability to see the types of questions and data necessary to answer questions for specific use cases, and allows you to map your data to that expert storybook to get a sense of how, and it helps to accelerate your ability to gain the insights for a particular use case that's already been studied. There's also Watson Analytics for social media. That's an extension to Watson Analytics that I'd mentioned before. And just sort of in closing, the idea with Watson Analytics is that it is a smart discovery tool. It allows you to engage with your data in that human way, allows you to answer those questions through the natural language processing that it has, and asks questions and provides responses. It provides that predictive analytics capability under the hood that allows you to get those drivers and predictive models without needing to know how to program or to use things like R to script your analysis. And it makes it much easier to tell your story and provides visualizations that can provide impact for your data. And there are also tools available to refine your data and to make your data more useful in your analysis.
So how can LPA help? First, if you see a benefit to Watson Analytics and you know the kind of data that you might want to use, contact us, let us know what you're interested in seeing, and if you'd like us to help you to develop more excitement within your organization, we can help demonstrate how Watson Analytics can be applied to the type of information that your business uses on a daily basis. We can also help if you think Watson Analytics looks great, but you're not even sure what data you might put into Watson Analytics to try to gain insights about your business. We can come in, talk to you about the data you have available, and develop a strategy and a roadmap for merging data across your organization to help you gain greater insights through Watson Analytics or other tools that may be beneficial to you. So thank you for your time today. Looks like we'll have time for only a couple of questions right now. So the first question we have is, you showed us a single data source. How do I handle multiple data sources? Is there a mechanism to merge data? Well, yes, with Watson Analytics today, you have access to a version of DataWorks, which is IBM's cloud data movement tool. DataWorks allows you to access data sources, primarily databases, either cloud databases or on-premises databases, as well as big data sources. And it provides capabilities for you to merge data across different data sets. And using DataWorks, you can merge your data and bring it together into a single data source or data set that you can then load into Watson Analytics for further analysis. Second question we have is, I really like the visualizations. Is there a way for me to export my creations to Microsoft Office directly? The answer is yes. You can export directly to Microsoft PowerPoint using the download tool within Watson Analytics. You can, when you download to PowerPoint, you select which tabs from your display that you've created you would like in the PowerPoint presentation, and all the ones that you select are created as individual slides in your PowerPoint. So again, thank you for your time, and if you asked a question that we didn't get to, we'll try to follow up with email as soon as we can.